Welcome, everybody. This is the Monday, October 15th already. Regular City Council meeting, TK, South Carolina. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see a bigger crowd than usual. First on the agenda is Jeff Shacker from MASC, Field Service Manager. He's going to give us a brief discussion on what is necessary to increase our city council up to 7 from 5, or just increase it in general, right?
Yes, sir.
Not our pay, guys, not our pay, just the amount of it.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it, and thank you, Council, for having me up. This is a great opportunity for me to interact with y'all, and not to unduly lengthen your meeting, but we've got a pretty good audience here, and if you didn't mind me mentioning a little something about the Municipal Association, that
Sure.
may be helpful for them to understand who I am and who I'm with. The Municipal Association of South Carolina, as Council is very familiar, is a nonprofit organization. It was established in the 1930s, and if you think back to the 30s, it was a difficult time for all folks, but including cities. Cities are very dependent on the state for the resources they need. They were struggling, and I think they recognized at that point that there was an advantage to having one voice in Columbia to get the resources that they needed. And so the association was formed at that time. Since the 1930s, it's grown a lot and provides a number of services to cities, and the Field Services program that I'm a part of is one of those. And so as one of 2 field service managers with the association, my role is basically to bring the resources of MASC to the cities, and I do that by working with the staff. That's most common, but also coming to meetings like this one. So this is a great opportunity for me to be in front of y'all and also the public so that they're aware that there is an association and sort of what we do. Y'all asked me to come this evening to talk a little bit about changing the number of council members here in TKK. And so I just wanted to brief you on that process and where you can find more details about it in the law. But when it comes to the procedure for changing the number of council seats, you can consult Title V, Chapter 15, Section 30 of the South Carolina Code of Laws. And so just a brief explanation of that. Title V, I always think of like the old encyclopedias that you had growing up, because see, now you got Google, so you don't have to get an encyclopedia. But when I was a kid, that's what your parents would buy you so you could do research projects. Well, Title V is like that 5th book in the encyclopedias, and that's where all of the laws related to municipalities for the most part can be found. Title VI, you've got some county and city statutes and special purpose districts, but the municipal statutes are there. Chapter 15, that's the 15 there, is related to the elections of officers, and Section 30 is the section related to changing the number of council seats, and it also applies to, there's another change in that section, and it just escaped me. I may have some stage fright, I'm not sure. But anyway, there's a second thing that you can do in that section. But the key thing to know, though, is to change the number of council seats. You can only do that with voter approval. Now, there's 2 ways to initiate it, though. One, and the most common, I would think, although this changing the number of council seats is not that common. It's more common, and I know what the other change is, when you're changing from 2 to 4-year staggered terms. We see that more often where cities are on 2-year terms. They have a situation where a lot of the council turns over in one election and they realize, oh, we can lose a lot of institutional memory in one election. And so they change to 4-year staggered. But that can be initiated by an ordinance of council or a petition signed by 15% of your qualified electors. The term qualified elector refers to, it's in large part registered voters, but it's anyone who is eligible to register to vote. So 15% of that number can initiate an election to determine whether or not the number of council seats has changed. The election must be held within 30 to 90 days following the certification of the petition. And regardless of the outcome, that election can only be held every 2 years. So if you change the number of council seats, That's locked in for 2 years. If the vote in favor of changing the number of council seats fails, that outcome is locked for 2 years. Form of government, that's 4 years. That's another example where the results are locked for a time. So the ballot, only one question may appear on the ballot, and the voters may only be given 2 choices, yes or no. And so the question, while it's not specifically laid out in the statute, there is another code section that is referenced that provides some language that would help in putting that ballot together. And basically it says, shall the municipality, in this case TKK, change the number of council members from the current number, which y'all are 5 currently, and the number that you've, or at least considering, is 7. So that would be on the ballot, yes or no. And so the voters would have the option to either approve or not approve the change. In terms of the options, and I know right now you're really only talking in terms of going from 5 or staying with 5 or going to 7. In the council manager form of government, we've got 3 forms of municipal government in South Carolina. The mayor council, some refer to as the strong mayor form, the council form, which some folks refer to as the weak mayor form, and the council manager form. Well, in the council manager form, you can have the option of going with 5 members, 7 members, or 9 members of council, including the mayor. So you've really just have those 3 options. And that is in Title V, Chapter 13, Section 20. So Chapter 13, that's where you can find the statutes related to the manager form if you ever have any questions about how that form is implemented. In South Carolina, we've got one city, because I thought we'd talk a little bit about the landscape. One city that has a council of 13 members, one that has 11, 9 with 9 total members, 100 with 7 members, and 159 that have 5. And we've got one city that has 6. And this is a trivia. This is a trivia one. So if you're ever playing pub trivia and it's got municipal government questions, you got this one. It's the town of Johnston in Edgefield. And there were a variety of reasons I won't go into related to some redistricting that was done. And because they are the mayor-council form of government, the statute says a mayor and at least 4 members of council. So you can actually have an even number of council members. And so they are the only one in the city with that. So the majority of,
Can you repeat those numbers again in terms of what the number of cities and?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that-
do. Okay,
Okay.
so let me give you the total because this is just
Okay.
cities with 10,000.
Perfect.
So we've got one with 13 members, one with 11, and neither of those 2 really pertain to y'all because of the form of government. Those are straw Mary cities.
Okay.
We've got 9 that have 9 members, which is an option for a city with your form of government. And thinking about those 9 off the top of my head, Mount Pleasant, Isle of Palms, Batesburg, Leesville, West Columbia, Chester, Anderson, Abbeville, Seneca, and Travelers Rest. So we've got a few council manager cities in that group. You've got 100 cities out of 271 in the state that have 7 members. That's more relevant for tonight. And then in terms of 5 members, there are 159 out of 271. So over a majority have 5. I think what's probably a little more relevant for y'all is to look at cities with a population of 10,000 or more. And Charlie had asked me to include that in the presentation. So when you look at the 2010 U.S. Census, and that's the only certified number that we have to go on right now until the 2020 census is complete. We've got 38 cities out of 271 with a population of at least 10,000 in South Carolina. So in terms of South Carolina, a city with 10,000 people in it is a pretty large city. When you look at the current estimates, though, we've got 40, and that includes y'all and Moncks Corner, right? Those are 2 very rapidly growing areas of the state. Looking at a breakdown based on Census 2000, of the cities with a population of 10,000 or more, we have 7 cities with 5 members. Based on estimates, we have 8, and that, of course, would include y'all. We've got 26 cities with 7 members based on the census, and 27 based on estimates. That includes Moncks Corner. And then you can see the breakdown, 3 with 9 members, 1 with 11, and 1 with 13. I thought it might be interesting to look at cities with a population of 10 to 13,000, because I thought that's even more, like if you think about it like a tennis racket, that definitely is the sweet spot of the racket based on y'all's current size. So in that case, we've got, again, 10 total cities based on Census 2010 with a population between 10 and 13. Based on estimates, it's 12. Based on the census, we've got 7 cities of those 10 with 5 members, 8 based on estimates. And then with 7 members, we've got 3 and 4 based on estimates. So actually, in the 10 to 13, which kind of surprised me a little bit, I thought the number would be 7, but 5 is more common. But that gives you a little better feel for kind of where you stand with your peers in terms of size. I figured that y'all would want to talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons of changing the size, in this case, increasing the size of council, and also the implementation. Let me first tell you a little bit about the implementation. Number one, while the election can be held as a special election, now you can time the passage of the ordinance so the special election coincides with your general municipal election, so that's fine. But if you hold it as an isolated election, it is not implemented until your next general election. So that is something that would be delayed until November, if you moved quickly now, November of 2019. That's your next general election. The statute doesn't provide clear guidance, and this would be a good question for the city attorney eventually. The statute does not provide clear guidance on how this change would be implemented if the voters approved it. So let's say hypothetically that they approved moving from 5 to 7 members. You've got a little bit of discretion, and it's based on my knowledge of the law, and I'm not an attorney, and working with York County to determine how you want to implement this. Like I mentioned, in terms of changing term lengths of council, we've seen that happen more often. We've seen cities move from 2 to 4 members. How they have dealt with the transition from 2 to 4 members, so they have to go
Years.
from.
You're talking about years.
Years.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said members, yeah.
Yeah.
Two-year terms to 4-year, thank you, to 4-year staggered, is that because they've got an election cycle issue there, they have used the number of votes cast to determine who gets 4-year terms and who gets 2. So in that example, moving from 2-year terms to 4-year, of course, the mayor receives a 4-year term. Generally speaking, the council members who receive the highest votes, so in the case of a 5-member council, the 2 that receive the highest number of votes get 4-year terms. The 2 that receive the 3rd and 4th highest number of votes get 2-year terms, and anyone below that, of course, is not elected. So using that as an example, one option might be for one of 2 things. One is that at your next election in November 2019, you have 2 council members whose term will be up, because you had 2 that ran with the mayor and were elected. Those 2 individuals would be up for re-election. You could have the 2 seats that were just created up as well. The 3 highest vote getters would get 4-year terms. The 4th highest vote getter would get the 2-year term, and anyone who received less than them in terms of number of votes would not be elected. So that's one option. An alternative could be for the entire council to be up for election, and then it would be a matter of the highest vote getters getting 4-year terms, the next getting 2. Now, I assume that's not the option y'all would want to look at, but that would be another approach.
Interesting.
And that would be consistent moving from 2-year to 4-year staggered in terms of the approach. But I would talk with the city attorney about it, and y'all have a contract with York County to administer your elections. You'd want to include York County in that discussion as well. So that's a little bit about implementation. In terms of the pros and cons, ultimately, like so much of this, it really comes down to a council decision. I mean, and actually a voter decision. Y'all decide, more than likely this would be initiated by ordinance. Y'all decide if you think this is something you want to initiate. And then the voters will determine whether or not it's something they want to approve. I will tell you that, there's an additional expense associated with having additional council members. I mean, you've got more than likely compensation if you're a council with compensation, which is most cities of any size. Training, education and training. I know y'all are big proponents of education and training, and you participate in our Municipal Elected Officials Institute, and many of you attend our annual meeting when you can. There can be some expense associated with that. But usually, though, when you're a larger city, say a city like y'all, with a population of 10,000 or more, as a percentage of your total budget, that's usually a fairly nominal expense. So we're not talking about something really significant. So I think it really comes down to, how homogeneous is your city? And if you've got areas that differ, either in terms of their demographic makeup or maybe some other socioeconomic difference, or just geographically, the city has grown and these areas are different. Well, maybe a case could be made that, a larger council could better represent that area. Typically, though, when that's the case, at-large voting method is not used, and usually you would have districts, or a hybrid approach is you've got ward residency, district residency, but at-large voting. The entire city votes on the seats. Or, it may be a hybrid approach where you've got a mix of that. Or you've got a mix of district council members and maybe 4 districts, 2 at-large council members, and of course the mayor elected at large. So there's some combinations that can be used. But I would say that would really be the big thing, just evaluating, okay, we've added 2 council members. That can change some of the dynamics. Of course, it can make council more stable in an election, because there are more seats that are up, and, the chance that, the council could be radically changed. I'm thinking more from an institutional memory standpoint would be lower. But again, that comes down to what the voters want. So, I don't know that you necessarily choose your council size based on that. But I think it would really come down to how diverse you've become in terms of your makeup and your geography.
This is really helpful. Thank you.
Any questions?
None for me.
Let me throw you a curveball.
Okay, let me brace myself.
So let's say we went to 7. Well, let's start from the beginning. So we would pass by ordinance. So the next election, we would ask the citizens if they want to add 2 more council members. And so that would be this next November, a year from now. And then we couldn't vote on those 2 people till the next election, right?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and this would be a good one for the attorney. The statute talks about the special election to change the number having to occur 30 to 90 days after the
Right.
petition's certified. If you go the ordinance method, I would assume, like a change in form of government, that it would be 30 to 90 days after the ordinance is adopted.
Right, so we would probably do the ordinance in October, September,
Yeah,
October.
to time it so that, you
Right.
don't have an issue.
So then the city votes that they want 2 more people. So we have to wait till the next election, 2 years later, to put those people up election.
That's my understanding of the
Okay.
statute, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd confirm that first, but yeah.
Unless there's a special
I
election.
think you actually have to do this in a special election, because it can be the only ballot, right?
No,
Maybe
we
the
could do
only
either way.
question on
We
the
could add it to the
referendum.
general.
Can it be added to the general, asking the referendum question?
I would look into that, but I always assumed it could be done in conjunction with.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that the reference, and again, I'm not an attorney, but I thought the reference to the single question was about how you frame the options to the voters. That, hey, it's one question and it's 2 options, yes or no.
Right.
But I would confirm that definitely.
Okay, now for the curveball.
Okay. Oh, I thought that was the curveball. Okay.
So I've always had an issue with not being able to vote for a majority every time. So let's say we have 5 people up here. One election, we vote for 3. The next election, we vote for 2, right? You're with me so far?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I was wondering, why can't we vote for a majority every time? If somebody's up here, they start taking the city in a way the city doesn't want to go, can we make the mayor a 2-year term and the others a 4-year term? So that way we vote for 3 people at every election.
No, sir.
So it's everybody's the same.
That's right, yeah, yeah. The only twist I've seen when it comes, and this doesn't directly relate to your question, but the only twist I've seen on 2-year terms versus 4-year staggered, traditionally 4-year staggered, you would have half the council plus the mayor in
Right.
one cycle, and you would have the other half of the council in the other.
Right.
I've seen a couple cities based on the wording of the statute where they have not had that type of division. They've had the mayor and then the rest of the council 2 years later. Because the wording in the statute actually provides a little wiggle room. It doesn't say it's half the council and the mayor and then half the council 2 years later.
But the statute does say everybody on council has to be the same.
Yes,
Okay.
but it does say that. So
Okay.
you've got the option of either every 2 years or
No, it'd be
every
too-
4 years and staggered.
So guess you're not punching early,
I'm
just
just,
when you thought you'd
No.
be 2 years and go.
no, I'm gonna stay.
Namaste.
Anybody else got a question? Okay, Jeff, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for your
Good
time.
being here. Appreciate y'all having me.
Thank you. And we'll see you at the next MASC meeting, right?
Look forward to it. Yeah.
Which is when, in October? Is there one now? No? No, I'm not going either. Okay, does anybody want to make a motion about the, changing the agenda? Be sure to, we're going to talk about personnel, but we won't talk about that. We'll talk about the evaluation.
Somebody else take it, I don't know.
You read it?
Might have to find it.
I'll do it. Council, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda on item 9, where it says, executive session to seek legal advice, reference TMS 644-00-00-001. I'd also like to add to that, no, I don't have it.
It's in the email.
It's in the email. Okay, let me see real fast. Let me grab my email. I got it.
You got it.
Amend it to add, to discuss the water project at Palmetto, the courtyards at Palmetto, and to also discuss personal matters, personal employee matters. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Ryan Richard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There, that was a roundabout way to get in there. Okay, let's go to public comments. Do I have any public comments? Anybody sign up? I don't have a sign-up sheet. No, no sign-up sheet, okay. Item number 3 is approval of minutes. Council, you've read the minutes. Is there any additions, deletions, or changes at all? Hearing none, seeing none, the minutes stand as published. Item number 4, committee reports. Economic Development Commission, start with Heather.
Okay, so for the Economic Development Committee, they met last month. They will be meeting again next week, next Monday here, October 22nd. So come join us if you'd like to. Just a couple quick updates. It was a brief meeting. Mainly it was an education piece for them. So they met with a Game On developer, and they really went over the overview of that project, reviewed the site plan, asked a lot of questions so that they can know what their impacts can be into that project when we get to that retail portion of that project. So that was really helpful for them. They also had the Chamber of Commerce come in, and they talked about the pros and cons of businesses coming to TGK and what they can do and how they can partner with them to really drive businesses coming into the city. So I think more or less it was just they were still learning. They're still learning what the benefit that they can have on things are. And so it was good for them to hear from both of those entities. The other thing that we went over was the interactive business map. We don't have it. I was hoping I could show it to you all, but it's almost ready. So what it is it'll show you each business within TK, and you can kind of scroll right down to that specific business. You can hover over it, and it'll give you the business name, their address, their contact information, website, everything. So it'll really give you kind of a bird's eye view of exactly what businesses are in TK. Would have been cool if we could see it, but to be continued, I guess. So that was it, but hopefully we'll see some of you next Monday.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Okay, moving on, item number 4B is Planning Commission. Alicia?
Great, thank you. So the Planning Commission held the regular meeting on October 1st, and if anyone is interested, we always have our meetings on the first Monday of each month right here in the Glennon Center. Starts at 6:30, so I encourage you to mark your calendars and come. We'd love to have you join us. So agenda items that we discussed, reviewed the draft ordinance of the small wireless facilities, which Chairman Leonard is here, and he'll be briefing us later this evening on that, so we look forward to that. We had initial discussions on adopting an ordinance to allow, or for either allowing or regulating accessory dwelling units, and we had a lot of discussion around this. And I know that I brought this up at the last meeting that we were going to be discussing this, but it really brings up a lot of issues around how you regulate this and the complexities that come along with regulating accessory dwellings. And just as a reminder, that has to do with like the mother-in-law suites on homes, and how we don't currently have anything in our ordinance that allows that. So we're looking at whether or not we change our ordinance so that we do allow it, or and what the implications of that would be. So more to come on that. We also reviewed discussed the draft pedestrian and bike plan, and we talked about the starting point checklist for the PDD developments. So having a checklist of things that we want to make sure that we're reviewing as we go through those developments when they come in. So for staff notes, Susan Brick gave an update to the commission. We talked about new contractor for River Falls. So that's forthcoming. New commercial property on Dam Road will request annexation probably later in 2018. So stay tuned for more information on that
This year.
in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, later in 2018. So yeah.
Got 2 months to go.
And
For those of
I
you
know
doing the
that
math at home.
our current year, not fiscal year. Okay. So at the last meeting, when I gave the planning commission report, I talked about the Stonecrest development and how we had one lot left, and so I just wanted to add here that Stonecrest Commercial Development Lot C1, for any of those who have a Stonecrest map in front of you, it will include multiple retail shops plus restaurants. So,
Is that where they're clearing the land?
Susan, do you know if is that where they're clearing the land? It is. Yes. Yes.
Right in front of Walmart? What's that going to be?
And a restaurant. Yeah.
A restaurant to be named later?
Okay. So exciting stuff coming to TKK. We're looking forward to that. And let's see. That's really just a good high-level overview of what we discussed. And just a heads up, in case you do want to mark your calendars one more time, November 5th, the first Monday of each month, 6:30 in the Glennon Center Planning Commission meeting. So please mark your calendars and come join us.
Great.
Thanks.
Any questions of Alicia? All right, let's move on to item 5A. 5A is a second reading of an ordinance relating to the recovery of collection cost as a part of delinquent debts collected pursuant of the Set-Off Debt Collections Act. Know it well. The city is currently participating in the Set-Off Debt Collection Act. The municipal association acts on our behalf to collect on debts owed to the city and has requested that all participants adopt their new model ordinance. This is the second and final reading of the ordinance. Are there any questions from our audience about what this is? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of an ordinance relating to the recovery of the collection costs as part of the delinquent debts collected pursuant of the Set-Off Debt Collections Act.
I have a motion from Heather. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alicia. Go ahead and vote now. Anybody? We've already asked questions, so no questions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Let's go to item 6. Let me catch up here. Computers, come on. 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay, I remember this. Okay, item 6A, new business. Introduction of a first reading for ordinance to authorize the issuance of a waterworks and sewer system revenue parity bond necessary to construct a new elevated water storage tank. The city's water system needs additional storage capacity due to the demand future users will place on the system. This 500,000-gallon tank will be located in the Windhaven development, and the developer has dedicated the land for the city to use it. This tank was included in the CIP for the impact fee rate study. Because this tank is only necessary due to new growth, the new growth will pay 100% of the expense of the debt to construct the tank through impact fees. Isn't that a good idea? Everybody understand that? Any questions? Any questions from the audience about who's paying for this tank?
Growth paying for growth.
Growth is finally paying for growth. So we passed the impact fee August 7th. And so when new people move in, they will pay for all the new things that we need to support them. Isn't that a great concept? Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add, so one thing I think is important for us to understand is the risk we take on by taking on this debt, and that is, hey, we're projecting all these new developments to come. What happens if they don't come, and what are we liable for? So what I've asked the city manager to do is to provide us some information on what's the projected development, what's the projected growth that we're anticipating, broken out by development, and go ahead and provide us what is the amount per development that we are anticipating to pay for this in the event that a certain development that we're anticipating to be developed doesn't happen. So I think it's really important that we get a good understanding of what that impact is, and especially given that, you know, payments won't be until 2021, and so we have to think out what's going to be happening between now and then. And when we're ready to make those payments, we need to make sure that we've got the money that we're anticipating from the impact fees. So I'm assuming that information is forthcoming.
I can
you have
provide it to you now. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
So as Councilmember Dash stated, based on the amortization schedule on this bond, your first principal payment doesn't come due until 2021. And it's paid out until 2034. Based on the homework, so to speak, that we have to do just to make sure that can we afford the bond. We do this with any of them as we run those financial models. Vast majority of your impact fees are going to come in around 2025 to 2027, somewhere in that neighborhood is when you're pretty much going to start maxing out. Yeah, unless there's new developments approved between now and then, based on what's on the books now. So Cadence obviously is well underway. It's still got a little more than 50% left of that development to come. They're not showing any signs of stopping, but you're looking at anywhere between $125,000, $130,000 in impact fee, utility-only impact fees coming in. So you've got the $6,676 impact fee that goes towards Parks and Rec, Police, and Fire. On top of that, you've also got, I'm wanting to say it's right at about $1,800 in utility impact fees, $1,107 of which is strictly to go towards the water improvements. So again, Cadence, if they were to stop today and say, we don't want to build the rest of the development, you're looking at a loss of about $125,000 to $130,000 in utility impact fee. I didn't run an analysis on the I'll call it the general fund impact fee. Cameron Creek, again, well underway. They've probably got 3/4 of that neighborhood completed at this point. If they were to stop today, you're looking at approximately $165,000 to $170,000 in impact fees that would not be realized. So that's what they've got left to pay in utilities. Game On, you're looking at approximately $450,000. So if Game On were to not start, which obviously they have started on they've mobilized on the residential portion. And again, all of these numbers are, so like Game On and Windhaven, both of those have commercial components. We did not run any calculations based on what the commercial would pay. Most of those are going to be about $700 more per meter for those larger meters. This is strictly on residential. River Falls, which Ms. Dash brought up during her Planning Commission comments, that was $150,000, almost $152,000 in impact fees there. If they were to not start, they were to never do anything. That's what you would be losing there. River Lakes, you're only about $5,500 because that neighborhood's basically done. Serenity Point, same thing. You're looking at close to $13,000, basically because that neighborhood's pretty much completed. Windhaven, $295,500, almost. You're looking at probably $300,000 plus if Windhaven does absolutely nothing, which they've already got preliminary plats, correct? Preliminary plats have already been approved. I would expect them to start mobilizing within the next couple of months. And then on your new commercial, we're estimating somewhere close to about $30,000. So that's the impact fees that will be coming in. Out of those, River Falls is probably the one that I'm least confident in, I would say, out of all the rest of them. But if they've got a new builder that maybe they're going to Eastwood's going to sell, my confidence level rises dramatically. So, Eastwood is the one also doing the townhomes next to the SIM building, next to the apartments where McHale's used to be. Y'all have seen how long that has taken just to get infrastructure in. We'll see what they do, but worst case scenario, in my opinion, I think all those impact fees are going to come in. It may just take a little bit longer because of the, with River Falls. But I think the rest of them we're on track to get, because those projects have been improved. You've already got the landowners have the entitlements, which are, that means a lot to them, from a marketability standpoint. A lot of these folks like, Lennar Homes on Windhaven, there's a lot of carrying cost on that land. You know, they're going to want to move forward. So could they pull up shop and not build? Yes. Have they given us any indication that they're not going to build? No, none whatsoever. So I feel very confident that these will come in. Now, right now, we're projecting in the year 2025, or by, let's say, 2027. It may take another year before we realize all those utility impact fees, maybe 2, but I think they will all come in. And during that time, the system's going to continue to grow. You're going to have more ratepayers going in there. So don't see this as anywhere close to being a rate impact to your users, both current and future.
Thank you. Now, this council here hasn't passed a single home addition, no houses, no additions, since we took over in January. And back then, we had about when we passed the impact fee, it was about 1,500 homes still outstanding?
I would say
Roughly,
13 to 15, yes. Sir. I
Okay,
think it's
13
pretty
to
close.
15. So without even considering the commercial part, I was just figuring up houses. At $1,100 per home in impact fees times 13 to 15 comes out to about $1.5 million, which would pay for the water tower all by itself there, not even counting commercial. Okay, so, and that's not even counting if a future council adds more homes, lets more development come in, that'll add to that also. Okay, so does everybody understand that? So, all right, any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Please step up to the microphone. Would you please step up to the microphone?
Jack Matthews. Are our impact fees held up for
No,
the same reason that the York County is?
no, sir. We were not part of the lawsuit.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Buddy Presley.
Hey, buddy.
I have a question about the streets. If you're gonna do all of this growing, are you gonna do anything with the roads, or are you gonna have to go to the state to try to, widen these roads to get more traffic flow? Because that's a problem now.
Well,
It's something that needs to be addressed.
we'll go ahead and answer that but this is really, we're just discussing the water tower right
Oh,
now.
okay.
Do you want to answer the streets?
I mean, Dam Road, New Grey Rock Road, Gardendale Road are all state-owned, maintained roads currently. I would imagine those are potentially the roads that you may be referring to, or at least Dam Road and Grey Rock Road. We asked for Pennies for Progress to include those in the latest Pennies program that was just approved. They weren't. Game On, the Game On development did a traffic impact analysis. There are some improvements that they've got to do on Dam Road. When we do a TIA for Catawba Park, there are improvements that we will have to do, just as a developer does on New Grey Rock Road. All of them need to be widened. Don't disagree with you at all. I don't think it's a wise move for the city to spend our tax dollars on widening what the state should
roads.
be doing. Now, if the state wants to give us the money to go and tackle it, I think we can get it done probably quicker, just because of the red tape that they've got to go through. But right now, that's not an option. I think with impact fees and other decisions that this council has made, I think for our current city-owned streets, we're definitely going to be able to start adding more money to our street maintenance as we continue forward, no doubt about it.
Any other questions about the water tower bonds?
I have one. It sounds to me like we're taking on the debt for the tower several years before we start collecting impact fees for the people that it's going to serve. Do we have to rush into that? Are we not rushing into that?
Yes and no. By the time you get this tower built, you are going to have you're going to have some improvements in Lennar. They're going to start going vertical by the time this tower comes online. Two reasons to do this now. One, in my opinion, very important reason is the $500,000 grant that we got from the Rural Infrastructure Authority. It's got a sunset on it.
Which is
If
what?
we don't, do what?
Do you know what the sunset is?
Well, we've already gotten a staff extension from this November to next November. If we don't have the tower up and operational comes first part of October, then we have to, it'll have to go to their full RIA board, which it may not get approved at that point. So we lose $500,000 towards this grant.
So that's the bigger risk then.
That's a huge one. The other reason for doing it now, by the time we get it done, which will be fall of 2019, we cycle into spring of 2020, we're able to take the water tower that's right out here in the parking lot, able to take it offline to repaint it, both exterior and interior, and it not affect any of the water pressures because the new water tower will be online. To do it before we bring that water tower online is going to put an enormous strain on the booster pumps that we have, especially the one that's there at Trailhead Park, because this water tower is going to be offline. That booster pump is going to be the only thing supplying pressure for traditional TDK. You're going to run the risk of wearing those pumps out. So being able to get it done now, biggest reason, in my opinion, is so that we don't lose out on the $500,000 that we got from the Rural Infrastructure Authority. Second, probably not as big of a reason, but go ahead and get it done now so that we can get this thing. It's time for it to be repainted. And the interior really more so than the exterior, because that's where your water quality comes in. So that's the reason to move forward now. But by next November, October, by the time this tank is online and live, you're gonna have vertical improvements in Windhaven. And obviously by then you're gonna have the vertical improvements starting in Game On as well. So you're not gonna be that far behind, or that far ahead, I should say.
And this is a 500,000 gallon, four-legged type tank. This is just the one, what we call a pedestal, or looks like a
This
golf
is a
ball on
golf
top
ball
of a
tank
tee.
here. The new one will match exactly what's on Shoreline Parkway in Lake Shore. Yes, sir.
Quick question, if, as far as for payments, if the city is making payments on this $1.255 million prior to the collection of impact fees, or the amount necessary to make the bond payments, is there a
Those impact fees will just go into the
median,
utility
it comes
operation.
back? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Now, this is a two-reading ordinance, so if you can think of any questions between now and next month, in November, when you can come back here and ask them then. It takes two readings to pass this, so we're only passing the first reading right now. So we have to do this one more time. Everybody understand that? All right, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion to approve the introduction and first reading of an ordinance to provide for the issuance of a waterworks and sewer system parity bond in the amount not to exceed $1.255 million necessary to construct a 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank and other improvements necessary to connect that tank to the city's water system.
I have a motion by Ryan Richard. Do I have a
Not
second?
done yet. Further move to award the construction of said tank to McLean Tank and authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents and issue a notice to proceed with McLean Tank at such time that council has given a favorable second reading of this ordinance and proceeds from the bond has been received by the
Big,
city.
long motion.
Good job.
I didn't know Marines could read. But
I studied before I came in.
I have a motion from Ryan Richard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Heather Overman. Okay, ready to vote. Everybody in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Item 6B. Discussion of an amendment to Ordinance 77 zoning code to add Article 18, small wireless facilities. Chris Leonard. Was that right? XVIII is 18? Roman numerals, huh?
Thank you,
Hey,
Mr. Mayor,
Chris.
members of council. We thought we'd try to do something a little different. We've got an ordinance coming to you in November for a first read. And it's a little technical and a little complicated, and we thought we'd give you some background ahead of time. So if there's any questions, that we can handle that. And the background of this is traditional cell towers are going to be rapidly replaced with what they call small wireless facilities. Small cells, microcells they call them. And that's partially because the technologies that are going to be used in the future won't work that far away from the customers and the consumers. And so what you're going to see is a proliferation of these smaller towers. What are we talking about? Things that look like this, which we're not really familiar with here in TKK. But if you look at some of the light poles and meter poles and things like that, wireless cells, cell towers, if you will start appearing on structures like that. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Why do we need this? There's several points here, and one that's the most important to me is the FCC just passed a regulation that basically gives the telecommunications industries a little bit of leverage over municipalities unless municipalities already have an ordinance in place, specifically around the aesthetics and the things that we can require and fees. And so it's important to get that done. What's important from a local standpoint, some states have already passed legislation that's quite in favor of the industry and takes a lot of the leverage away from the municipalities. So it's important for us to get that. From a technology standpoint, and I don't know if it's on the next slide. It is. We've talked about that. MASC put together a model ordinance that worked together with the FCC ruling in mind, the industry, to put something that balances industry needs and municipality needs so that we can have some say about it. So it's out there for us. It's time to put it in place. And maybe importantly, these new technologies, 5G is the one people are probably familiar with, are going to come online shortly. Several cities already have trial systems in place. Charlotte, I think, is one of them. AT&T has one there. The actual industry standards, they'll be finalized next spring. So they'll start rolling out. Now, in reality, they probably don't roll out to TKK right away. We're probably on the trailing edge of that. But I would be concerned about new large facilities like Game On. I'd be concerned about the 160 corridor so that we get out in front of that and we have an ordinance in place in case those kinds of things do come around in the next 18 months. So the ordinance that we've put together is actually largely defined around the MASC model ordinance. It does establish these wireless facilities as a permitted use in public rights-of-way and utility easements. It does not allow for them to be on private land at this point or city-owned land. Those would be zoning variance required. Any zoning districts with what's called supplemental review, think of the Marina District, some of our PDDs, those would be established as conditional uses and subject to a little further review, but it would still be allowed there if we decided we wanted it. Importantly, I think what it does is establishes some aesthetic structure that we can impose on the carriers so that these will only look like what's already there. So if it's in say an electrical easement, it'll look like substation equipment, a little more industrial. If it's in the middle of the median on TKK Drive, it would look like light poles, that kind of thing. And so that's important. And then, of course, this establishes an administrative process, what they call a shot clock, how much time we have to approve that, the carrier's application, and a fee structure. So what comes next is we expect that we will finalize that ordinance and recommend on our regular meeting on the 5th of November to bring that to council for first read. And then on the 19th of November, there'll be a public hearing and then a special meeting from us to actually recommend it, and then a planned first reading at your meeting on the 19th. Any questions?
Are these
Thoughts?
small cell towers, are they connected, are they cabled together or wires?
So one of the reasons they put them in easements and utility easements is cable infrastructure and fiber optic infrastructure tends to already be in
there.
place. Already tends to be in place.
If that's not the case, are they digging or can they do a wireless connection?
They can, and there's specific provisions, I think in the ordinance, Susan, for underground districts and things like that, so that new infrastructure can be put in underground. I don't think it would create any new above-ground infrastructure, and I believe that's a piece that we have some control over.
And then you said something about fees, collecting fees? Does the
Yeah,
city collect a
so
fee?
the FCC regulation limits the fees. There is a lawsuit, Portland, Oregon, I think, is suing the FCC because they wanted to charge really high fees because it's a revenue machine for them. And so I think they probably had a fee structure already in place that would be limited by the FCC.
Did the MASC recommend a fee structure?
They did, and it's in compliance with the FCC.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be in compliance with that. So it's still some revenue for the city, but it's not a significant revenue stream. And I think the revenue model, or the fee model, is designed to overcome everybody's costs so that the city stays neutral for any costs that they have to put in.
So so there's no monthly fee for being in our city,
I think
like
there's
this
a
cell
monthly fee.
tower is?
No? Franchise.
Franchise fee? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other
All right.
questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So I actually went to a seminar on this at MASD, Alicia and I did. And so I went through and dug out all my goodies about this when I went to it. But one of the questions I had is, do you guys have any data so far as to the number that we would potentially need based on our population, the businesses, the usage in our area?
I don't. My expectation is, like I said, from when we would see it in the residential part of TKK, down the
Right.
road, and I will even say if ever, it'll probably come. My expectation would be we would need it in the 160 corridor where we have city property along 160 and any large facilities. Game On is the one that instantly leaps to mind, that they might want to have that kind of capability inside buildings. And one of the things that these newer technologies will require is inside building systems, if you really want to provide coverage, especially in a big steel building like Game On is probably going to be.
And keep in mind, the cell tower right out here that Verizon Wireless owns and maintains, they just put fiber optic in to get ready for 5G off of that tower. So I agree with Chris, the likelihood of them wanting to come down TKK Drive is probably slim to none because of what the expense they just went through in putting those fiber optics in all the way down the road, so.
And from there, they could serve, this area, right? They could serve the community center, but they wouldn't be able to serve much of the residential population from that tower. But
I think these are more like a mile radius at the most.
that.
Yeah.
if that,
Yeah,
true
at the
high-speed
most.
5G is probably going to be half a mile kind of things. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
So we should expect this in just about every neighborhood.
I would think so. It'll depend on customer demand. Obviously, those things roll out where people who are paying the fees are in high density. And while we probably perceive ourselves to be high density, AT&T and Verizon might not, certainly right away. So I wouldn't expect this to be a right-of-way issue, except, again, like I said, out on the 160 corridor, where the constituents of AT&T aren't citizens of TKK. They're the people who are driving through TKK on 160 in their car.
But these are meant to facilitate growth. They're not meant to handle, they're not bringing down the other towers. This will just be as
Well,
growth
that is
occurs.
probably true. That is probably true. One of the other uses of these smaller towers is where current 4G or LTT that most people, or LTE that have on their phone, where there isn't good coverage, they're not building big towers anymore. They're building these kinds of facilities. So it's conceivable that would be the technology that might show up here in TKK first, is expanding their 4G footprint for people who maybe don't have it then.
Chairman, is there any concern or any, priority given to like public safety locations such as like the fire stations? Do you know, are they looking to make sure that we have?
There could be. Certainly with the 4G technology, there's a federal public safety initiative to provide dedicated 4G coverage and service for public safety. And there could be that.
Okay, but is that 4G or is that 5G, did you say?
We've got priority on the bandwidth for public safety.
Okay.
So if there's a active shooter, severe weather, any type of mass event, our lines already have that priority on the bandwidth for the 4G or for the LTE technology.
Right.
We're already on that with Verizon.
And my expectation is it would just be a matter of policy down the road as 5G becomes established. The same kind of agreements would be put in place so that public safety would get a certain amount of prioritization.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, move to item 6C, the approval of a letter of credit and performance labor and material surety agreement for final plat of Cadence Map 3. At their Tuesday, September 4th meeting, the Planning Commission approved the final plat for Cadence Map 3 contingent upon approval of a letter of credit and performance labor and material surety agreement. We have received a letter from the city engineer certifying certain improvements have been installed, and this letter includes an opinion of probable cost to complete the required infrastructure. The required improvements are to be bonded by a letter of credit in the amount of $182,842.50. Are there any questions? Any questions from the audience? Perfectly clear. All right, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I'd like to make a motion to approve the letter of credit and performance, labor, and material surety agreement for final plat Cadence Map 3.
All done? I want to write those down. I have a motion by Gus Mucinas. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Alicia. Okay, any final questions before we vote? Okay, time to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Have we been unanimous all night? No, it's just tonight. It's coming up to Halloween. All right, item number 7, City Manager Report. City Manager Charlie Funderburk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As a reminder, everybody, Fall Festival this weekend, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Here right outside the Glennon Center, as well as upstairs in the main ballroom. We've got a DJ that'll be playing music throughout. Sonic Rewind be on hand later in the day to play. Lions Club doing a costume parade, as well as a dunk tank, which should be very interesting, I think. The Women's Club is doing a garage sale here in the lower level. We've got lots of food trucks, lots of amazing vendors. We've actually got 116 vendors, which is fantastic. Hopefully the weather cooperates with us. Parking up here that day is reserved for golfers only. Everybody else who wants to come, either walk up or grab a shuttle from either Rundy Park or TKK Elementary School. They'll be running all day to get you back and forth. Also on Saturday, if you know firefighter Stan Hutton, you see him around, congratulate him or offer him condolences, whichever you prefer. He's getting married this Saturday, so congratulations to him and his future bride-to-be. As everybody's aware, construction on the new police station is well underway. They've started digging out the median today for that turn lane. Once they get the patrol entrance established, they'll be shutting down the other entrance. That will become a construction entrance. General public, just as a reminder, you cannot go onto that property any longer until we open the new station. If you need to speak, if you need to interact with the police department, it's during normal business hours, come to City Hall. We've got their kiosk. We can get your records request, 72-hour permits, things like that. If it's after hours, you need to speak to an officer, call the non-emergency number. That number is 548-0340. The dispatcher will be who answers the call, and she'll get an officer in touch with you. If it's an emergency, regardless of what day it is or time of day it is, call 911 as always. If you want to keep up with the construction of the police department and get updates and things like that, Lacey has created a new page off of the police department's portion of the website, posting periodic pictures, things like that, if you want to keep up with it. Once the building's dried in, council, we'll actually do a tour with you guys, and let you kind of get a lay of the land once they get a roof on it. So weather set them back a little bit last week, but hopefully they're going to pick up pace, and we're still looking to move in hopefully by mid-July of 2019. Friday, November 2nd, I'll be holding a department head retreat that afternoon from noon to 5 with our department heads. Town of Fort Mill was gracious enough to allow us to use their Spratt building at no charge so we could get off site and really work through some things. Chief Parker and I will be out of the office on November 5th and 6th, that following Monday and Tuesday. We're going to a summit of law enforcement chiefs as well as city managers. And we'll be hearing from folks that were at the Pentagon during 9/11, that were at Sandy Hook, that dealt with Hurricane Katrina and things of that nature, on how to deal with those mass events and the interactions with the public. So we'll be doing that for 2 days and then coming back. And last but certainly not least, my report tonight, and I think we've got some folks in the audience here. I'd like to ask them to stand up, maybe come forward so we can recognize them. Council, these are members of the All Play Together Board of Directors. I am pleased to announce that they have selected this. They have chosen the city of TKK to take their fundraising money, and they're going to put it with us, and we are here in the near future going to be converting Trailhead Park into an all-inclusive playground, first of its kind in this area. I am super, super excited about this. I want to thank them for their time, their vision, and coming up with an idea like this, and I want to thank them all for including us in such an amazing, amazing project. We will hopefully in the coming weeks we'll be meeting with their contractor and things like that, really kind of hashing out what the actual timeline will be. We'll let the public know, but yeah, there will be a period of time where Trailhead Park will be closed for business, but when it reopens, it'll have something magical, and I'm really, really excited that TKK can be a part of this. I don't know if any of the board members, Laurie, any of y'all want to speak, but did want to make that announcement and to let everybody know. So.
Thank you, Charlie, and the TKK City Council. We are very excited to be partnering with you to create this inclusive play space that can be enjoyed not only by those families who need a place like this to play, but also for the entire community. It's a playground that can be enjoyed by everyone, and we certainly encourage the participation of the entire community. We've worked hard to reach 60% of our fundraising goal, and we continue to move forward raising funds. And like I said, again, we're very excited to partner with you in TKK, with the City Council, the Mayor, the City Manager, and the entire community to bring this playground to the TKK Fort Mill area. I think it's long overdue, and I feel like we're getting very close to being able to realize our goal.
Wonderful.
I want to thank you.
Anybody else?
And,
Anybody
I
else?
have a question.
City
If
Council.
someone wants to donate, where do they go?
We're going to have all that information we'll be pushing out. They've already got a website. Go ahead.
We have a website, allplaytogether.com. We are going to be participating in the TKK Fall Festival. We have just begun a tile painting campaign, All Paint Together, and the tiles that are painted will be incorporated into the playground, so they'll be there forever for families to enjoy. You can donate from our website, and certainly we welcome and encourage any kind of donations that people are willing to consider.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And over the next coming months, we will be working with them to put on some additional fundraisers, things like that. As she said, they will be at the Fall Festival. So we're super excited about this project. I know all of council has been supportive. I do want to take a second to thank Mayor O'Neill and Mayor Pro Tem Heather Overman for your efforts over the last few months. Mayor O'Neill in setting up the meeting to actually introduce us to All Play Together, and Mayor Pro Tem Overman for your assistance as we've worked with their board. So, but this is an exciting project. Really excited about this redesign of Trailhead Park and what it's going to look like and what it's going to do for our city. And with that, that concludes my report for the evening, sir.
Any questions of the city manager? Hearing none. You thinking about it? I just thought you were thinking.
None for me.
All right, let's move to item 8, council comments. Ryan Richard.
I don't have anything. Well, I guess I do. For you guys with All Play Together, just as a good gesture for my council pay for the next 3 months, we'll donate directly to your cause. That's it.
Cool.
Alicia?
Okay, so I just wanted to say a couple things. One, I'm really looking forward to the Fall Festival. It's one of the best events here in TKK. One of the many great ones, but it's really a lot of fun. So I encourage folks to come out. I also just wanted to plug a reminder to be safe for Halloween. It's really dark on a lot of our streets, our residential streets in TKK. So if you're sending folks out or your kiddos out, you're walking with them, make sure that they've got flashlights and they're got enough things that are bright and people can see them and golf carts can see them. So just a reminder on that. And also don't forget to check your kids' candy. Make sure it's safe. And then I also want to talk about real quickly just Mayor Pro Tem Overman and I held a community event on September 28th at Windjammer Park. And so we want to thank those who came, especially those who came and are here tonight. So thank you so much for coming to that. We appreciate it. We received some really good feedback. And we're hoping to do a more promotion of the next one that we have. So stay tuned for that. But thank you for those who came. We appreciate that. And then lastly, I just want to mention, we had talked about a couple months ago when we were doing our budget retreats about whenever we close year end, taking a look at how much is in our fund balance, our reserve fund, and how much has come in at the end of the year, what, if we didn't overspend, and taking a look or thinking about that strategically in terms of what types of capital investments do we have around the city, and how can we further those funds to go back into the community and help invest in the improvements that we need. So I've talked to the city manager about that again, and hopefully forthcoming in November meeting, he's going to, when he gives his presentation on year end and where we came in at the end of the year, he's also going to include some information about what happened to the public dollars that weren't spent from the year end, and how do we want to use them? Do they need to go into reserve? Have we met our council policy in terms of what percentage we want to have in our reserve account? And then if there is any leftover, do we want to put that towards capital improvements? So just wanted to put a plug in that. So be thinking about that and how you might want to use those funds if there are any at the end of the year. So that's it.
Gus?
I'll be brief. I came down with a nasty cold today, and we all know how men can be such babies when they're sick. All play together. Thank you so much for choosing us. I'll just say that now. Fall Festival is coming up this weekend. Charlie mentioned the dunk booth. I can think of 4 people in this room that are going to be victims in there, and the spouse of someone in this room that's also going to be a victim. And 100% of that money is going to go to the Lions Club locally. So I'd urge everybody to come out, and happy Halloween. That's all I got.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So thank you all for being here. All play together. I'm super excited. This has been really hard for me to keep this secret for so long. So I'm excited we can finally talk about it and it can be out in the open. And as I've mentioned to all of you, I completely believe in this mission. I believe in support in the project that you've put together, and you've done an amazing job. And so I'm just really excited that we can partner with you all. Again, everybody's already mentioned it, but come out to the Fall Festival. I will be in the dunk tank from 11:40 to 12. If you are upset with me about anything that I voted on recently, feel free to get me in the water there. And then also just a reminder that Tuesday, November 6th, everybody should be voting in the election coming up. So I hope to see you all at the polls.
Thank you, Heather. Since our last meeting, we've had a councilman with a birthday. Heather turned 23 again. So happy birthday to Heather. I just want to remind everybody that Veterans Day is going to be coming up before the next council meeting. So that's on Sunday, November 11th. The TAK Veterans Association will have a short ceremony up there. It is a Sunday, and it'll be on the 11th day at the 11th hour. So it'll be 11 o'clock in the morning. And we will do an unveiling of another, another flag box like we have out here. Only this one is an old post office box that we had a local artist paint up for us. And so if you have any unserviceable flags, just like the one out here, we're going to put this one on the other side of the lake at TK Fire Station number 1. So we'll have 2 places for you to deposit your unserviceable flags. Since we did the first one over here, we had a lot of flags. We even had a flag company brought their 54, 55 unserviceable flags. They've been saving up for that. So we've already disposed of those we rendered them, in the proper fashion. We're supposed to get rid of those. So we've got another one across the lake. So hoping that'll be put to good use also. And I want to just thank Chief Parker and the police for the National Night Out. That was a lot of good information, a lot of fun, a lot of hot dogs. I overate again. Thank you very much for that. This mayor's job is going to kill me sooner or later. And with that, I think we should make a motion to go into executive session. I'm making a second. And this is one we always get unanimous. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Don't do it. We're now in executive session.